So I'm Nikki Lewis, and I'm in the Grants Management Department. I'm the grants manager there, and our department has the pleasure of providing oversight of federal funds that we receive in from HUD. And we'll be speaking to you about those funds that we received today. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce our team here. So if you all will come up, and then, since my boss just walked in, we'll have him come down and welcome you all as well. So Troy is the Chief Equity Officer here with the City of Arlington. We report to him. Come on, greet the people, Troy. Oh, you want me to start now? Yeah. And if you all will come up to.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy to have a chance to stop by and talk to you all. Number one, let me just start by saying thank you, because you all are the folks that kind of bridge the gap between government and the community and really make a difference. And so we appreciate your commitment to the community and to individuals and helping folks. So what I wanted to do real quick was just talk to you a little bit about some of the priorities that we have from the Equity Office. I've been on board here for just over a year, about 15 months, working particularly with the Unity Council. And if you all are familiar, the Unity Council provides a lot of recommendations to the government to address issues around populations that are in need. And so we've had 57 recommendations on our initial Unity Council, and we just issued our second report where we have addressed those recommendations, talked about our progress, where we are as a city, and then we've also identified some new areas to move into in the future, and some special populations that we want to address. So I just want to give you a quick little highlight of what some of those priorities are, and how they tie into the other priorities of the city. And so if you all had a chance to catch the mayor's State of the City yesterday, his theme was jobs, 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 right? And so we're really focused on providing support services that will allow people to take advantage of those opportunities and create those opportunities in jobs. And I say that because there's a widening income gap here in the city, particularly in some of our underserved areas and communities, areas like East Arlington. And so we really need to think about workforce development and education programs that are going to help move people into employment opportunities. Small business incubation and development opportunities where we're teaching folks how to build businesses. And then also with respect to that, literally looking at some specialized industries that show promise for opportunity, like tech hubs. I don't know if you all are familiar with the tech hub that was just established and funded by the federal government in the Dallas area, regional tech hub, as well as STEM for our young people. In the area of healthcare, access to healthcare is a critical issue for us. And so if we can find providers that are going to increase access, while also building a pipeline of culturally competent providers themselves, we'd be very interested in those things. From a housing perspective, I think Nikki and her team have always been committed to moving people from housing vulnerabilities to renter opportunities and then ultimately to home ownership. I think we want to continue down that pathway as we move forward. Also giving thought and consideration to our homeless population and some of those vulnerable populations that are impacted by that. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about kind of that intersectionality even of our veteran population and homelessness. So those are things that are of interest to us. And then finally, public safety. As you all know, crime is down in the city, but we want to make sure that we keep it moving in that direction. And we also want to move it in that direction in terms of building a partnership with community and having some critical discussions and opportunities to build programs that engage both community and law enforcement to ensure public safety. And then finally, in our report, I'll just do it real quick, some of the special populations that we want to address in our future recommendations. The disability community, both physical disability and mental, and also to giving some thought to mental health as well in that context. And one of the things that the Unity Council identified was making sure that we create continuums and pathways of resources for folks and that folks understand those resources and can help to navigate those resources so that they can get the services that they need. And in our senior population, we're really focused on preventing social isolation, and also ensuring food security for many of our seniors. A lot of the areas here in the city have food deserts, and also tied to that social isolation, we want to make sure that our seniors have access to healthy food. And then finally, I talked a little bit about veterans and making sure that they have the resources. Our Veterans Task Force is very active in doing that, but we could also use that support. And then finally, in the LGBT community, we're taking a lot of inclusive steps to make sure that we're creating a welcoming community for that population as well. So with that, that's my quick highlights. Again, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for continuing to help us do this important work. And I'm going to let Nikki turn it over and introduce the team.
Thank you so much, Troy. And so now we'll move forward and we'll introduce I'll actually allow them to introduce themselves to you. This is our grants management team here. So.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're so delighted to have you here. I'm Catherine Donaldson, the program specialist, and it is a pleasure to see you all here today. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sarah Kanima. I'm the Grants Evaluation and Compliance Analyst, and we're looking forward to sharing information today and just networking. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, everyone. We welcome you here today. My name is Safana Coronado. I'm the grant supervisor. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Shanna Washington. I am the grants coordinator here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Fulton. I'm one of the grants coordinator here. Good to see everyone. Definitely good to be able to put some of the names with the faces. I've had an opportunity to meet most of you, some of you through the wellness program that we had last week. Glad that you could also attend. And if you need anything, definitely feel free to reach out to us.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Crystal Almaraz, and I am the grants assistant, the supporting staff for our grants management team. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and we'll get to what you really came here for, right? So we'll start with a funding overview, and today we'll be discussing our CDBG, our ESG, and our home entitlement programs. We'll start with the CDBG program, but before I get there, I want to give you just some insight into the types of funds that we provide and what those actual amounts are. In the past, I think a lot of applicants have had to maybe apply to the programs blind and not really understanding how much we really receive in for our public service categories. So we felt like breaking this information down will help you to better capture your scope of work and services ahead of time so you can plan based on true funding allocations. And so you'll see here that our CDBG public services, the amount that we estimate in funding should be about $500,000. Now, you all have to remember that our funding is allocated from Congress, who hasn't quite decided on what the budget for next year will be, but that's pretty typical. So we're accustomed to that, unfortunately. But once we receive that award letter in, we're assuming that our funding will probably remain static this year, which isn't terribly bad. For those of you all who've been with us for quite some time, you may recall that a couple of years ago, we actually received a decrease in our CDBG funds. We're not anticipating that this year. We're anticipating that it should remain static. But that'll keep our public service amount at about $500,000 out of our total CDBG allocation. We usually receive in about $3.3 million in CDBG. They allow us to allocate only 15% of that to public services. So we're estimating about $500,000 there. We've also carved out a special category this year, again, for our micro enterprise programs, and those are to help economic development initiatives in our small businesses throughout the city. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but you'll see $100,000 carved out for that. The next grant type is our ESG grant, which is our Emergency Solutions Grant. Those funds usually go to our homeless service providers, and we've broken it down to show you the shelter allocations as well as the rapid rehousing and prevention allocations, because there are caps on the amounts that we can give to shelter and to outreach. So we're only allowed to give about 60% of our funding to shelters and to outreach. So that's the 171, and the remaining usually goes to the rapid rehousing and prevention of homelessness. And then lastly, you'll see our home grant. We have carved out here about $1.25 million. Now, there is a bill right now that's being floated around that may reduce home funding significantly this year. We're hoping that that doesn't pass. If it does, then we'll share that information with you. But right now, we're hoping to at least see those funding levels static. The $1.25 million that you see listed here also includes a CHOTO set-aside, and our CHOTOs are our community housing development organizations, where HUD says that, hey, you need to set aside a portion of those funds for them. There are nonprofit developers that go in and help us build affordable housing throughout the community. And so there's $208,000 that's set aside for our CHOTOs within that $1.25 million. So that's just a breakdown of the different grant types that we have and the funding that we anticipate receiving for next year. So if you do the math on that, we hope to be able to at least fund about 30 awards, 20 to 30 awards, which is usually where we are. The range will be between $10,000 to $40,000 for our CDBG services. So kind of keep that in mind as you're crafting your applications. So the first grant that I'll provide an overview of today is our Community Development Block Grant, better known as CDBG. And so you'll probably hear that term throughout the remainder of the presentation. And our Community Development Block Grant is for our public services. We're able to do larger community development initiatives with those funds, where we do infrastructure, street infrastructure projects. We just completed renovation of the Herschel Street. We'll be starting on Marcellus and Slaughter, which are in our neighborhood revitalization strategy area. That one should start in May of next year. We're able to do renovations to some of our nonprofit, some of their buildings. The Boys and Girls Club, I think, will be starting on probably within the next 2 months. Alliance for Children, are you all familiar with that project? So we just finished that one up. We provided funding for that. So when you see community development initiatives, that's really the largest scope of our CDBG funds. Out of the total allocation that we receive, the majority of it pretty much goes to those community development initiatives. Then we have the public services category, and then our micro enterprise development that I mentioned to you all earlier, which is for the small businesses, or small business development rather. The general parameters are that public services is about 15% of our allocation, as I mentioned, and that programs must serve very low to moderate income persons. And so I wanted to provide you all with just a few examples of some of the services that we see that we usually serve, or the individuals that we serve, or the programs that we provide with our CDBG public dollars: senior citizen services, employment assistance, financial literacy, child care assistance, after-school programs, health care, substance abuse treatment, education. This list is not complete, and there are other items, and we're always looking for new initiatives. As Troy just mentioned earlier, a lot of concepts and council-approved priorities are still yet to be touched. So we're always looking for ways to expand upon these eligible services, but this just gives you a gist of some of the things that you can provide here within the community. And so micro-enterprise program objectives. So a micro-enterprise is a business that has 5 or fewer individuals or employees, and one of them has to own the business, okay? a person who's developing a microenterprise is someone who has at least expressed an interest in it, which means it doesn't have to be a business that's already started. It can be an entity or organization or someone who's expressed an interest in wanting to start, and then you would be the provider who assists them along the way with that. And I'll give some examples of what that looks like on the next slide. They would have to actively be working towards developing the business, though. That's the expected outcome of microenterprise programs. And so here's just a few examples of what technical assistance looks like. So as I mentioned, you could be working with them on how to start a new business, how to expand a business, marketing and sales development, advertising, business research and planning. These are all of the different items and components that go into helping small businesses develop. We've seen time and time again, if you think about it, all of us have those family members who can cook really well, right? But they've never really gone out and figured out how to monetize that. So these are the individuals typically that you would be working with, or anyone who's, like I said, it has to be 5 or smaller. I've had folks to ask me, can it be 10 or can it be 15? No, HUD's guideline is a little bit more stringent than most other guidelines, so it does have to be 5 individuals or smaller for the operation of the business. But if you would like to provide services to small businesses or to someone who would like to start a small business, then this would be a special tranche of funding that you can apply for. And I'll show you how to actually do that within our application. It's not separate. In the past, there was a separate application for microenterprise assistance. This year, it's actually combined in with our CDBG grant, so it's the same application that you would complete for a CDBG application, with the exception of when you come to B6 in the application, and I have an example of it right here on your screen, you would select yes, and then it opens up those specific questions that pertain to microenterprise development. Now, these applications will still be scored separately. The funding is separate from our traditional public service funding, but I wanted to let you all know that there was an opportunity to at least apply for these funds should you be interested. And if you have more questions about it, we'd love to talk to you about this program as well. And so our next grant is the Emergency Solutions Grant, better known as ESG. And as I mentioned to you all earlier, our ESG grant is one that we use to help our homeless friends to become housed or to prevent them from becoming homeless, to provide shelter services and things along those lines. There's also rapid rehousing funds that we provide. And then we also provide funding for HMIS, or our Homeless Management Information System, which the Tarrant County Homeless Coalition assists us with operating. So those HMIS fees go towards their data collection and management of that system. They house all of that information for us. And the general parameters of this grant is that, as I mentioned earlier, our shelter funding cannot exceed that 60%. And rapid rehousing and homeless prevention has to obviously serve families that are below that 30% of median income, so 30% AMI. And now with CDBG, I'd like to mention that there's no match for our CDBG funds, okay? There's no match required. Now our ESG and our home grants are slightly different. So with ESG, there is a match. It's about a 101% match, which means that you would have to be able to show that you have funds or resources that you can match from other non-ESG federal sources. So to be able to, or to be eligible to apply for our ESG grant, you have to be a member of the Tarrant County Continuum of Care. Okay, and I mentioned them earlier. That's our Tarrant County Homeless Coalition, and the Continuum of Care is a coalition of municipalities, so Arlington, Fort Worth, and other cities within Tarrant County who work together on homelessness. They're the lead agency that HUD recognizes for North Texas. And so you would have to be a member of the Continuum of Care, be active with their meetings in order to apply for our funds. Subrecipients must also involve at least one homeless or formerly homeless person on their board. So Safe Haven, Salvation Army, Arlington Life Shelter, these are all, in Arlington Urban Ministries and even Hands of Hope, these are all organizations that have received our ESG funds in the past, and each of them have a member on their board who was formerly homeless. And so our next grant is our Home Investment Partnerships Grant. And so our home funds are funds that we use to help stabilize housing within the city of Arlington. As Troy mentioned earlier, and as you all are all aware, I mean, housing prices have just skyrocketed over the past few years, and it's really become less of an issue of affordability and more of an issue of attainability, right? And so even though you work a full-time job, maybe even two, it doesn't mean that you can afford to purchase a home, unfortunately, in this market, and especially with the increase of interest rates. And so our home investment partnership works to really make sure that those individuals who are typically underserved are not left behind. Funds can be used for acquisition, demolition, rehabilitation, and also the construction of properties. A lot of our organizations have moved from actually home sales to rentals because of the market. We have a couple of projects that are underway right now that our Chodos are working on. One is right off of Dan Gold. That one hasn't started yet, but it's actually a duplex community that our Chodo is working on, and that one's going to serve the homeless. We also have another project that's right off of Wind Terrace, if you have an opportunity to drive by. That one's a cottage community. It's one of the first ones in Arlington. It took a long time to get that one approved, but that one is an elderly community, and 6 of the cottages there will be low-income units that will serve the elderly. And so this is how we're able to help reserve those units here within the city of Arlington for those who are most vulnerable. And then we have a project that's underway, our multifamily project as well, the Little Ridge project. That one has just started. That one's 59 units of affordable rental housing for the elderly community as well. I believe 52 of those units are actually affordable and only 7 are market rate. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So now with our home partnerships funds, 25% match is required on that grant. And again, it has to be from non-home sources, okay? And at least 15%, as I mentioned before, of our funds are always reserved for our Chodos, which are our nonprofit developers. So our nonprofit developers, they're not in it to make money. They're just really in it to do good work and to help us produce units here in Arlington. And so here I just wanted to give you an idea of what our timeline looks like. So this is our PY 2024 action plan timeline. And you'll see we're here today with our funding availability workshop. Grant applications are due on December 1st at 5:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. After you all submit your grant applications, our United Way Grant Review Committee will go through the process of reviewing all of those applications, and they're here today to kind of talk to you about what that looks like and to provide you insight into that process. And then they'll turn it over to city staff, and then from there, we'll begin meeting with our C&D committee. Usually, that takes about 3 or 4 C&D committee meetings to go back and forth with them to make sure that they have had an opportunity to assess the applications and the scores that are received in from United Way. And from there, we'll post it for you all to review. There's a 30-day public comment period that's required. We typically anticipate that the approval comes from our city council about the first or second week of May. Okay, that's when it goes before them for consideration. And then we have to submit this plan to HUD, and that's usually due about May 15th. From there, we will notify those who've been selected, and we will have a subrecipient workshop and get the contracts out so that they can be signed. And then our new contract year begins July 1st of 2024. So the contract years span from July 1st until June 30th. Is that right? Okay. So that's our process in a nutshell, and those are our 3 entitlement grants that we have. We have additional funds that will be coming out a little bit later in the form of a home ARP grant. We haven't re-released that one again, but we will for those who are interested in that particular grant. But for this particular application period, we'll be opening up our CDBG. Those who also want to apply for CDBG Micro Enterprise can do so under that particular application. Our ESG grant, which is our Emergency Solutions Grant, and then our Home Partnerships Grant. Does anyone have any questions before I turn over the mic? No? Okay, so I'm going to bring up Stefana Coronado. She is the grant supervisor of our programs, and she's going to give you all just a little bit of insight into what our neighborly application process looks like so that you know how to get registered and get in and begin submitting your applications. The applications are actually live, and so you can go out there and take a look at them. I will say this now, and you will probably hear it multiple times before the end of the day. You really want to make sure that you get into that portal early. Don't wait until the day of, because technology has a way of doing what technology has a way of doing. So we want to make sure that you have plenty of time to produce wonderful applications for our United Way Grant Review Committee. So, Stefana, thank you all.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lewis. Good morning, everybody, again. Glad to see you. And with this portion of the presentation, I'm going to go over the application, which is hosted by our Neighborly software it actually houses our application portal. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. Okay, so when you are first accessing the portal, you're going to see that you can either, this is actually for some of the people that have been previous users. You're going to sign in. You can still use your previous email address, and you can use your password. For the existing users, but for our new users, we do need you to register. And once you register, you will enter your email address. Your email address is going to be your user ID as well. And you will also receive a validation link that will come from Neighborly that's going to basically validate you with your email and security purposes. You're going to still enter your first name, your last name, your password, and all that good stuff. Okay, and then once you do get a chance to register, you will get a confirmation email that's going to come from our Neighborly software system, and they are going to actually make sure that you are the person who you say you are to use the system. So once you get a chance to get into the application portal, there's going to be a couple of applications here that you can see. We have the CDBG Public Services, we have our ESG subrecipient application, and we also have our home affordable housing. And once again, as you see here, we have the micro enterprise that's going to be listed under the CDBG Public Services application. So when you get to this particular portion here, you're going to be sure to enter your organization name. You want to make sure that there is a specific format, and it's going to come up into the next slide here, but there is a way to make sure that you're consistent with that. So on your application here, it's going to actually tell you the contact person for your particular application that you are signing up for. So there's a couple of coordinators that we have with us here where you will be able to reach out to them. Their email and contact phone number will be listed on the particular application that you're signing up for. So once you get a chance to get through your application, each section of the application will allow you to save your section prior to completion. So just in case you happen to go into your application, you don't have to feel like you're have to fill out everything all at one time. You can save it, you can come back to it. So it doesn't require you to save those in a specific order either. And if you ever need to have a portion of your application opened back up, say you had something that was an error, you can just reach out to the coordinator that's in the contact, and then we can get that reopened for you so that you can fix those errors if you have some. Okay, and then it's pretty easy as far as adding any additional users that you may have. If you do need assistance with that, we are here to help you. But adding a user is very simple, and they will need to go through the same registration process as you went through in order to be linked up to that particular application. And then just so that you're aware, each application section is printable in PDF or Word format. And so you can also select the printer icon at the upper right-hand corner of your section page to get that printed for you. And then just a few things to make sure that you keep in mind is to fully answer all your questions in the application. Also provide all required documentation, add any additional documentation as necessary for clarification, and then upload documents in a PDF format. The name of each document in the following format, which is your organization name, the name of the document, and where the name of the document is taken from the required documents list. So again, that format that you have here would be the same format that you have when you set it up as well. And then be sure performance measures fully capture services to Arlington residents. You also want to be mindful of that. And then double and triple check your budget documents as well before you send those over. And then just to be mindful of is that our application requirements, once again, our submission deadline is Friday, December 1st by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Late applications will not be accepted, and paper applications are not allowed. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sarah Kanema, who is our evaluation person.
Thank you, Savannah. Good morning once again. I will be taking us through the evaluation criteria. After the submission of the application, it's going to go through a process of review, and we're just going to go over what that process looks like and the scoring. So I'm going to start with CDBG and ESG. They kind of have the same application sections. Home is a little bit different. So these are the maximum points that you can get. It's 100 points in total that you can get, and those are the sections that they would be reviewing. So we have the organizational capacity and experience. So in this section, they're just looking at what the experience of the organization is, and if you have any past experience with grant management, that's what they'll be looking at. Evidence of need for service. Those are the points, 21 for CDBG, 20 for ESG, and they're just going to look at how well you demonstrate the need for the service. And then statement of work and scope of service is just also looking over if you're a returning applicant, what your past performance was, goals versus achievements. If you're a new applicant, just to look at how well your program aligns with the city goals, council priorities, and things of that nature. The next section is the budget and budget narrative. They would be looking at how well detailed the budget is. Also the cost per unit. I'm sorry, I'm running out of breath. Short person, so I gotta move forward. Okay, so the budget and the budget narrative, they're looking at how well detailed your budget is. And for ESG, they're gonna look at whether you've met the match requirements. And of course, we're also going to be looking at the standard forms and attachments, make sure all the required attachments are there in the application. So the total points is 100 for both ESG and CDBG. Okay. So for home, the points are also 100, the maximum points that you can get are 100. And the sections are somewhat the same, just I think the only different one is the project design and development details. They're going to be looking at your experience and if you have any experience working with home funds, and then just how well detailed your project design is, how well you demonstrate the need for the project and things of that nature. And of course, the standard forms and attachments, and those are the points that are available, totaling up to 100. Okay, so that is the evaluation criteria. And then the scores for each organization, like Dr. Nikki said, would be then forwarded on to the grants management from United Way. And then we present this over to council for them to make a determination, or as they review the applications and funding requirements. Okay, so the next section I'm going to be looking over is our goals, our outcomes, outputs, and activities. So if we applied for funding last program year, we did notice that there was a bit of a difference in the application process. We did send over a contract form for a certain exhibit, Exhibit B, that we had to go ahead and pick our outcomes and goals on activities that were already preset. So that was a bit of a difference from the previous application years that we used to put in our own outcomes and outputs and activities. But we were having a bit of a challenge when it came to putting together our different achievements when it comes to reporting for the city, grants management to be able to meet our reporting requirements. So we kind of came up with a preset list of outcomes and outputs in an effort to standardize that process, as well as improve impact evaluation. So the designed outputs and outcomes are all based off the subrecipient contracts. We try to make sure that we were looking at what our partners were doing and trying to align them to what our goals and outcomes are to kind of standardize that process. So we did have that form for the last application process, but for this year we will be adding that to the application in Neighborly, and we just thought we could go over it so that it's not confusing or something that throws us off from last year's application. Okay, so this is an example of what it's going to look like in the application. It's going to go under Section D. I think that's the scope of services section. So you will have a list of outcomes that you will be picking. And if you're a returning applicant, I would strongly suggest that you look at your Exhibit B, your scope of services performance measurement section in your previous contract to kind of guide you on how you pick your outcomes, outputs, and activities. So that's just an example of what it's going to look like there. It's going to be a list of outcomes that you can select. So in this example, for example, if your outcome that you're hoping to achieve is to contribute to improved social conditions for low to moderate income persons, you would go ahead and select that. And after you select that, the next thing that's going to populate is a list of outputs. And from these outputs, you will select the outputs that will contribute to achieving your selected outcome at the top. So you would pick one of those outputs, and then after that, you pick the activities that you will be conducting to be able to achieve that output. So you go ahead, and there's a long list of activities to pick from. We tried to make sure that we covered everybody, and we were able to get feedback from the last application process, and organizations that felt like the activities were a bit off or they were not well represented. And this is still a work in progress. If during the application process, especially for new applicants, you feel like the activities, you're not seeing your activities there, please feel free to reach out to us. but I think we've done a good job to pull in as many as we can. So you go ahead and select your activities from the list of activities. And then after that, the next thing is that we ask that you give us a description of the activity, just so you can give us a bit more detail on the activity, because maybe our activities are a bit simplified or a bit not capturing everything that you're doing. So you go ahead and give us a description in the description section, and then after that, we request that you give us what your targets are for every quarter. So that's an example there. For example, if you're targeting to serve 100 for that program year, and you give us those targets for the quarters, and then you give us the unit of measurement, whether it's on duplicated persons. There's going to be a drop down on your right. There's going to be a drop down on your right. It's going to be on duplicated persons and duplicated households. And then there's an option, if those two are not your units of measurement, there's going to be a third option for you to put in whether you're doing something different. For example, United Ways, one of their units of measurements is the collaborations or meetings that they have. So they would pick other and then specify their unit of measurement. And then there's an option to go ahead and add another activity. If you have more than one activity for that output, then there's an option to go ahead and add another activity. And then it will take you through the process again. The activities will populate, and then you select your second activity, include the the targets, and the units of measurements for those. Okay, so the last portion of this is just the methods and tools that the program will use to measure outcomes. So if you're doing any post-service surveys or any other tools that you might be using to measure the services that you've done in the year, then that would be the section or the portion that you'd be filling in that information in. And this is just an example of what it would look like. This example, we put in like a user guide, and we're going to link it in the application in case you have any challenge completing the process. It's going to be linked to the application for you to be able to look at as you go through the application. Okay, so that marks the end of my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and hand over to our program specialist, Ms. Catherine Donaldson, and she'll walk us through the post-award expectations and requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. How's everybody doing? You're okay? Everybody still with us? You're okay? Okay, all right, just checking, okay. So now is the fun part, the post-award, the money. How will you get reimbursed? I'm sure that's a big question. So let's briefly go over the finance section, the post-award, funding your grant. How to get reimbursed, what's reimbursable, how long will it take to get reimbursed, and let me click this slide. How long will it take you to get reimbursed? I know that's a big question, and I'm glad you asked, and we'll give you the answer to that. The grants management finance key responsibilities are to administer monthly reimbursements, account reconciliation, budgeting, and forecasting. Also, we conduct the second reviews, and of course, we have to submit that for our HUD draws. Our draw request life cycle. How do you get reimbursed? First, you submit your request into Neighborly by the 10th of the month. We even appreciate the early ones like Steve. I see he stepped out, but yes, we do accept those as well. The coordinators will conduct the first review within 10 days of receiving the draw request. This is a thorough review of contract and budget compliance. Please be sure you have your monthly reports, your accomplishments, your receipts uploaded, and the authorized signature page with 2 signatures. What's reimbursable? Please refer to your contract. It lists all of your items on your contract, what you all are requesting reimbursement for. That's the best place to find, to make sure everything is accurate of what you're asking to be reimbursed. This will prevent any delays in processing your request. After the first review is completed, the grants finance team will conduct a second review by the 24th of the month. Actually, the first review, once it's in by the 10th, we have within about the first 10 days or so for our grant coordinators to review your request and make sure everything is as it should, so it can proceed to the second review. And we do that just to make sure everything is, caught, and so we have the second review, and that's done by the 24th of each month. After which, the second review is completed, it goes on to, the coordinators will send it on to the accounting department. And that usually takes between 3 to 4 days for them to process that request or that payment. From there, you should receive your disbursement. Should it fall behind a little bit, feel free to contact us. We'll be glad to check with the accounting department to see if there's any holdups or that sort. But lately with Neighborly, everything has been moving really, really well. So I understand Neighborly to some may not be as neighborly, but it is very neighborly friendly. So feel free to, if you have any questions, to let us know. Our service commitment, we understand funding is essential to a successful operation. It directly impacts how we all are serving the community. For this reason, we continue placing payment processing as a top priority. Our goal is to create an environment where understanding and managing your grant funding is a seamless task. For this reason, let's see, okay, I'm sorry. Public speaking is not my thing. I can tell y'all right now. So just bear with me. So if you can get your payments into Neighborly, we can manage and process invoices more efficiently and in a timely manner. So the top tips are: monthly invoices are due by the 10th of each month. ACH payment setup is required. Neighborly is the primary method of submitting your invoices. The grant coordinators are the first point of contact for questions, and communication is key to a successful partnership. So if you are running behind on submitting your invoice, if you just let us know ahead of time, or if something comes up, we can be on the lookout for it once you send it in. But other than that, that's our post-award process. And if you have any questions, please see Dr. Lewis. And from here, we will turn it back over to Ruth Osse with United Way.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go over kind of what our reviewers are really looking for, some tips and tricks. The areas that we focus on, you'll see that are areas that our reviewers really want us to highlight as we're talking to organizations. But just to briefly introduce myself again, serving as the Regional Director for United Way of Tarrant County. United Way I'm not used to this clicker, y'all. It clicks so fast. But United Way has been serving the community for over 100 years, supporting residents through fund distributions as well to agency, as well as programs through tax preparation, serving our older adults and veterans. And we have been a partner in reviewing the work of CDBG, ESG, and home grants for several years now. With me today are our program manager, Caitlin, if you want to come up and introduce yourself just briefly, Alex McMartin and Robert Harder with our grant review team, and you're actually going to hear from them briefly after and hear directly from the source of those that are reviewing the grants. This is Caitlin.
Hi, I'm the program manager, so I work pretty much on everything that Ruth works on, just helping her with that, and I'll be working with our grant review committee as well.
Awesome, thank you. So our review panel, it's important for you to know who you are writing to. Our review panel is 100% volunteer driven. They are community members that are either live or work in the city of Arlington. We try really hard to be reflective of the city of Arlington with a wide variety of different demographics, and either having community volunteers, but also individuals that work in different areas of the community. As staff, we only facilitate the process. We do not give our input or give any advice whenever reviewers are scoring those grants. We help facilitate the conversation. Our United Way grant reviewers do meet for consensus meetings after they do their individual reviews to talk about and discuss the scores. At that time, they're able to kind of tweak those or have conversations about why they feel a certain way about the scores that they're having. As mentioned previously, we then provide those scores over to the city of Arlington, so we do not or are a part of any of the allocation process, which makes our job really easy. And we're grateful for that as well, because it really gives our volunteers an ability to look at the nonprofits that are serving the community that they are a part of. So you saw the scoring rubric, and these are all essential parts of a grant process. I won't go into detail into too many of those parts, but I do want to highlight some key areas. You know, in general, you have your executive summary, your needs statement, a project description, your budget evaluation, and supplemental documentation. And I can't tell you how important it is that you provide all of that for your reviewers. And that is your IRS determination letter, recent audits, and financials. So for your needs statement, really has to easily explain what your program is while focusing on the need rather than why your organization needs more funding to avoid mission creep or chasing the funding. And that's really when you're morphing your program to fit the grant rather than looking for opportunities or grant opportunities that are already serving the mission of your organization. Ask yourself, does this grant opportunity really fit your mission? Will your strategy be changing in the future? And if this is a new area for your organization, you want to highlight that on your needs statement. And I will say that this also includes geography for those organizations that are serving all of Tarrant County. So why is the program needed? Specifically in this case, why is it needed in the city of Arlington? Show us the data. This is meaningful in a couple of different ways. How do you outline or showcase the need for the program? How do you convince reviewers for the total number of points that you're making a meaningful change in the lives of families and communities that you're serving? And we'll look at different ways that you can retrieve this local data. But you also want to address, what would happen if the need is not met? How is your organization's ability to respond to that need by being able to provide a holistic approach and consider related challenges? So by this we mean, if you're serving a community for a specific need, are there other things that might come up, and how are you able to partner and collaborate with others to fix those needs or those related challenges? I'll touch on this a little bit later, but really highlighting your plan for sustainability. This is not just looking at funding, but being able to look at adaptability and leadership succession. You'll be surprised how this shows up in your grant application because there will be gaps that are missing. And lastly, but not least, when you're writing your needs statement, make it easily understood. Feedback that we hear back from reviewers is like, I think I read something really great that's happening with this organization, but I don't really understand how it's going to be executed. So you want to make sure that it's easily understood. So where can you find supporting data? You can do it nationally, state, but local data, the further you dig down, will speak more about the community that you're serving. You can do this by geography, zip code, sector health, looking at the unhoused community, student population, looking at institutions of higher education, hospital clinics, any prior foundation work that has been done in the city of Arlington, Tarrant County public health data, will help provide rationale behind your program. So you're answering the data really is the backup as to why your program is needed. An evaluation, I did leave this area here. Evaluations are not an allowable expense through this grant, but it is something that you would want to seek funding for in other opportunities if you do not have an evaluator on site. I left this on here because I do think it's important, especially if you're a returning reviewer, evaluations are periodic studies that nonprofits undertake to determine the effectiveness of a specific program or intervention to answer critical questions about your program. There are many, many ways that you can conduct an evaluation, different assessments and data collections that you can have, but to keep it simple, I use information from the Bridge Grant Group. It's really defining the key questions to be addressed, designing the evaluation, conducting it, analyzing the data, and being able to use that as data sources, any feedback for your grants, but really how you're going to implement that change. One of the key questions that you want to ask is, how are you using data from your evaluation to drive decision-making in the process and post-process? So looking at the evaluation throughout the life of your program, most programs are encouraged to use this type of evaluation when they're measuring specific milestones, whether that's quarterly or you're meeting specific targets, to make adjustments that are quick and easy that result in a greater impact. And I say this because it shows funders that you're willing to assess the program during the duration of the grant cycle, making you good stewards of that money. To be able to say that you are being flexible and being able to allow for changes to happen, because we know life happens to us, even in the nonprofit sector, things fall through. So you want to be able to have things in line to follow through to really execute your program. So a couple of different just data collection methods. You have surveys, focus groups, interviews, documents and records. So really going into vital statistics and birth and death rates. Observation, so this will be site visits to really look at the program, be able to see if you're able to scale or course correct, and then assessment. So these are post and pre-tests. For example, if you're looking at education, you want to make sure that individuals are being tested before and after. And a variety of different approaches or combinations of these can be used. So I touched on sustainability a little bit earlier, but this is really looking at how you ensure that your organizations have enough resources to carry out the program. This is an organization's ability to continue its mission and programs beyond the duration of the grant period. This includes a solid financial foundation, but really goes beyond that to look at leadership succession planning, not only at the executive level, but how are you identifying and developing future leaders within an organization so that you ensure a smooth transition of leadership. So information shouldn't be just gate kept with one individual, but really help provide that continuity of vision and mission, transfer of institutional knowledge, relationships, and expertise. And you may think, like, how does this even show up in a grant? But it does, whether it's that you have someone different writing the grant review that might not have that knowledge previously, or when it comes up in your finances and your financial audits as well. And then adaptability is really looking at the evolving needs of the community and funding landscapes. as well as the intersectionality of partners that are working at the same space that you are, to see if there's any shared outcomes or opportunities to collaborate. Partnering with organizations that may have a program that is cost prohibitive to you, or they may be able to do it at a lower cost. So earlier when we asked you, to find those commonalities, it's on purpose. We want you all to be able to collaborate with each other, find ways to bridge the gaps. I think we all have the same common goal to be able to provide services and have a better community in the city of Arlington. So, supporting overhead cost, getting that down to the unit or client being served. We use the example of Meals on Wheels previously, and in other grant workshops that we've done before, and that's because they have the unit or cost of unit down to a T, right? They look at how much does it really cost to provide a meal for a client. They're looking at packaging, food, but also including the delivery of that for their staff, so including that in the overhead cost as well. And then sustainability, this is something I think we all struggle with, and I know as an organization, ourselves struggle with this, is doing this at the forefront of strategic planning and thinking ahead. I think oftentimes we all get really bogged down at working our programs and getting things done and serving the people that we need to serve, that all of these things can go back in the back burner, that we're not thinking of, but it shows up as we're applying and talking to different funding sources. And the last thing that I will mention before I hand it over to our reviewers is the piece on equity. We had our Troy earlier to really talk about, the different areas that they're looking at. And I think equity fits in your grant application in several different ways. If you all are familiar with SMART goals, adding the INE at the end of it to make it inclusive and equitable in the acronym. And I want to share with you all an equity framework that I have found really useful. And this framework emphasizes the importance of building capacity to engage in equity-focused actions, to include clear intent, capacity-building activities, shared language, strong leadership, and community ties. So going back to data, it promotes equity-focused actions based on local data, targeted initiatives, community strengths, and deep structural analysis. So it prioritizes representation, meaningful inclusion, shifting the power to those affected by the problem, and engaging traditionally underrepresented groups. It advocates for equity systems to remove those structural barriers. So us as organizations removing those barriers for clients to increase access. And ultimately the goal is to achieve equity population changes by closing gaps and outcomes for all groups. So this is, when I say it's embedded in your data, we all have, fantastic programs with great outcomes, but really looking to see if we're serving those that are most underrepresented, because we can have a fantastic program, but if we're not serving or reaching those that need it the most, then we need to do a change in strategy or look to see if there are other data points that can support the work that we are doing. So at this time, I would like to invite Alex and Rob to just kind of talk about some of the trends that they have seen over the years. They have been with us for a couple of years as reviewers, and they also serve as two of our co-chairs. So I want to invite them to share some of that feedback with you.
Good morning. Are we all still awake? My name is Alex McMartin. I'm an audit senior with Sutton Frost Carey, and I think this is my third year on the grant committee.
Third or fourth?
Fourth, yeah, one of those.
I think we started about the same time.
Okay.
I'm Rob Harder. I work with JLL, and yes, as I said, about my fourth year on the grant review committee. Alex and I are co-chairs.
I think one of the biggest things that we see every year that isn't being utilized is the grant submission feedback. So we're always telling our reviewers to get as specific as possible on those comments. And then Ruth, Rob, and I, we go through and, compile them together, obviously removing any duplicates so you don't see the same thing, saying, hey, maybe spell check 7 times. And it's really specific tips, and it's coming directly from the reviewers saying, hey, you're great, here's how you can be better. And I feel like that grant advice just doesn't always get utilized. And if you don't remember where you put it from last year, you can reach out to the city of Arlington because they keep it on record. The other thing is, we get complacent. We've got some really good data. Ruth touched on how to update your data, but sometimes we're looking at grants and all the statistics are from the year 2000 or the year 2010, and that's great, but there have been a lot of changes in the country in the past 13 years, so try to update it. Maybe if it's that same statistic that you really like, go back to the source data and update it, get some fresh information. It's just like how they always say with your cover letter that you want to tweak it to fit the job you're applying for. Don't just copy and paste the grant you use for all of them. Obviously, you're going to recycle some of that, but then think about it and actually tailor it to this grant. How will the CDBG funding actually help your organization?
Yeah, and I think one thing also that we focus on a lot is those budgets. Just make sure all the numbers tie together. It can be somewhat sterile to put those numbers together, but it really helps tell the story. And I just want to convey that, I realize sometimes these applications can be sometimes sterile to put together, but we know the work behind it. You're very passionate about that, and the grant review team does see that. So to the extent possible and the need for service, just provide as much detail as possible on what you're doing. I promise you that the team gets that, and it really helps in pushing those applications through when you tell that story. So.
Ruth touched on this, stick to your mission. Make sure that we understand what you're doing. If you are, just like with the community comments, if you have had other grants that you do, you've gotten feedback on, incorporate that. Know the process and the platform. So Nikki touched on, hey, if you log into Neighborly on the day it's due for the first time, you're going to be panic stricken because inevitably it won't work and you'll get locked out. Log in today. Make sure you can log in, and even if you don't circle back to the grant for another 5 weeks, at least you know that you can get in, you understand it, and if you have any questions, you've got plenty of time to get someone to help you out. Here's the big thing that I find a lot. I'm a CPA. I read financial statements all day, every day, and I work mainly with nonprofits, and sometimes I get into these grants and I have no idea what you're talking about. There are 6 acronyms on a page, and they were defined 3 pages back, and I've been reading it for an hour, and I'm like, wait, what is that again? The best advice I can give you is maybe ask a spouse or friend or someone who knows nothing about what you do, an aunt, a cousin. Ask them to read it over and have them ask questions, because our reviewers are all community members. It might be a teacher, a banker, anyone. And they don't know all your acronyms. They don't know. And I get into this all the time when I'm talking about financial statements. I use acronyms. They're like, what? Are you speaking a different language? So the other big thing would be metrics. Nothing is a perfect world, right? If you didn't hit your target goals from last year, don't be embarrassed. Don't try to gloss over it, because that always gets pointed out, right? Go into it. Why didn't you meet the metrics? Why will this funding help you make sure that you can hit your targets? And you have to also understand, too, all of these reviewers were here because we love working with nonprofits and helping people improve the city where we live and work. And so it's not like some big, evil, blank face that you don't know. It's Rob and me and dozens of reviewers who are local citizens who just also want to help the place they are. And what Rob was saying with the math, if you're not a math person, there's someone in your life who can use a calculator and can just go through and spot check it. Even if you're amazing with it, don't spot check yourself. I make math errors. Again, I'm an accountant. You wouldn't expect me to make math errors, but you're human. It happens.
Are there any home grant applicants in here? Because that's kind of a unique thing. Mm-hmm. This isn't always possible because you're probably ahead of the curve. But if you have any plans and specifications, the budget's the biggest, the most important things in that development process. But it also helps to see what the final vision's going to look like, even if you don't have plans and drawings, maybe a conceptual drawing. So just, that helps the committee too, because it's kind of a specialized grant, so. Thank y'all. Yeah.
Getting closer. Be louder.
I was trying to yell as loud as possible. I was just going to say that just any kind of conceptual drawings you may have, if you don't have plans and specifications at the time you're applying for the grant, that will help the review process.
Verify that you have the demographic information. A lot of you have your board list that you already submit for your audits and whatnot, but it doesn't have the demographics. You got to put that in there. And if you don't have demographics on your board, you've got 6 weeks to send out an email to your board and say, hey, we want money. Can you give us this information? It's just for this grant application. We're not doing anything else with it. Attach the documents. Have someone else double check that you're attaching all the right documents. And I'm sure City of Arlington would say, maybe do it early even, so that then they can say, hey, you're missing a document and you'll still be on time. I think, you have one more?
Yeah, I think that's it. Just, again, and it also helps as far as those documents to have the resumes of everybody on the team for the reviewers to look at.
So they give you the scoring rubric. We've gone over it a little bit, but it's like an open book test. You can go back through it and be like, all right, how am I getting every single one of these points? Because every year we see fantastic applications with great missions with lower scores because they didn't look at the scoring rubric.
All right. Did we already go over this slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sorry.
I may be going the wrong way. I don't know.
No, I kind
Y'all
of.
want to hear this thing again? I can.
So you've got some really specific information, and you've got 2 reviewers here. So does anyone have questions about things that came up on reviewers or things you weren't sure about with the process?
All right. Well, I thought we had 2 slides. It looks like it's about 17, so.
Yeah, we spread it out a little bit.
Okay.
All right, we're going to turn it back to Ruth. Thank you.
Never trust me with the clicker. Okay.
Note to self, Nikki, we'll have to get the United Way team to, on the clicker. Just wanted to share some additional resources. We have our United Way YouTube page as well as our Greater Arlington Resource Sharing Group. I know a lot of you, and I see a couple of familiar faces attend that, but we meet the first Wednesday of the month at noon. We usually provide lunch. The next one that we're having will actually be a virtual one, and we'll go over Texas legislative updates, but we have others that we've done on evaluations and grants, so we encourage you to come on board and join us for that. We also wanted to provide just information about Board Bill. They do board governance training, but also can provide nonprofits with diverse board members that want to serve their community, as well as C&M score, and then the U.S. Chamber Grant Writing Guide just provides another outline as another grant writing resource. So I will turn it back over to the grants management team. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much. I'd like to give a special thanks again to our United Way Grant Review Committee. These folks work really hard year in and year out to review the grant applications that we receive in, and it is no minor feat, and they take it to heart. They take it really seriously because, as they each mentioned to you, they're all citizens of the city of Arlington. They care about Arlington, and they want to make sure that with the funds that we have, really go to those who need it most. And it's very interesting just to hear their feedback and to listen in on their sessions. I don't know how they sleep at night, but a lot of them really take this very seriously, and they're very detail oriented. So they are reading these applications through and through and coming back and battling for organizations. So please take advantage of the fact that they're here. Please take advantage of the reviewer comments, because those are the things that we hear annually, year in and year out. They can tell the organizations that have kind of copied and pasted from another application. They can tell those who've maybe waited just a little bit longer to get those applications in. It really does shine through. And then they can tell the organizations that have really put a lot of work into it just at a glance. So thank you all again for your diligent work. We appreciate you all so much. We could not do this without you, and I just appreciate you being here and sharing your expertise. So thank you. I'd like to open up the floor just one more time for any questions that you all may have. Just want to make sure that if you, there the hell, you waited for me to get back to the mic to have questions. I got it. Okay, go ahead, right there in the back. And so the question was regarding the grant application focus areas and whether or not we would have specific enterprise areas that we would like for organizations to focus in. And so our consolidated plan, which is a 5-year plan, actually within that consolidated plan, those areas, specific areas were selected. And that's our East Arlington area, which is 76010. And then our neighborhood revitalization strategy area, which is actually just north of here as well. And so those two specific areas provide us with a little bit more flexibility in our funding. And so we can actually fund organizations on an area basis, which means that it's not, I don't want to get too technical here, but it's not on a client by client basis. It's because of the area median income of those individuals who live within that area. And so those areas will always remain. They're currently still areas that the city focuses on, but of course our application is for entities to serve individuals citywide as well. So it's not just those areas, but those areas are highlighted because of the area median income. You're more than welcome. And if I sound crazy, it's because IT, who's hiding in the back, has told me that I have to repeat the questions for the recording. So that's what's going on here. Go ahead, yes. Hi, Casey.
First, thanks for your support in the past. We really appreciate it. You mentioned the CDBG range for about 10 to 40,000 this cycle. Are you wanting us to cap our request to 40,000?
It's not a cap. It really. Okay, so the question was there a cap on the amount that you could actually request for CDBG public services? And so my response is that that's not a cap. It's really just an estimate to kind of let organizations know where council usually funds in between. Because we have received in some applications that were well beyond that request. They write beautiful applications, and then we have to go back to them and say, hey, council wants to fund you, but can you change your scope of work? And so to try to prevent that as much as possible, we just wanted to give you a slight idea of what that range looks like so that if you're selected, then you won't have to do those major overhauls to your scope of work, which really changes what the grant review committee and what council initially thought, they were funding. Because you just quite simply can't do the same thing with 100,000 and 10,000, right? There's going to be a huge gap. So that's what that range is, Casey. Thank you, Casey. I think you can come on up here and do the presentation for me. He's asking if the slides will be available, and they will. So the slides will be available on our grants management website as well as the recording. So you'll have an opportunity to go back to watch the recording and actually to review the slides as well. Okay, thank you. Those are wonderful questions. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Well, you can always reach out to our office. Our email address is grantmanagement@cityofarlingtontx.gov. I also have some cards here for those of you who haven't quite figured out how to find me. I think most of you have. But you can always reach out to us if you have questions. As we've said, I urge you all to go in, check out the application. Some things have shifted. There may be some items that you have questions about that you'll want to get responses in on that early enough so that you can put your application together. And we understand that will occur, that may occur. And so we would just want to make sure that it doesn't happen on the 1st. So thank you all so much for coming out. We appreciate you. We appreciate the work that you all do. We know that it's no minor feat. You all get up every day with service on your hearts, and we appreciate that. We understand that our jobs are to partner with you in those efforts and to give you just a little bit of funding to help perhaps you go just a little bit further than you would have been able to on your own, and we appreciate that opportunity. Actually, visiting with you all is the highlight of what we get to do because we're kind of stuck behind the walls the majority of the time. So I just want to say thank you so much, and let's get those applications in.